This is my KTM 500, and this is primarily how I ride it. After 5 years of owning this bike, here's 5 things I hate about this bike. Go ahead and roll the intro. If you're new to my channel, I'm primarily keep this bike in supermoto trim, but there are times that I've taken this bike on several different adventure trips, riding it for 15 hours a day, like 3 days in a row. And I was in Colorado, doing all kinds of riding, like adventure riding, long highway trips. Mostly this thing is like just a hooligan machine. It can absolutely handle everything. I've taken it on regular trails, like trails with my saddlebags and everything. Absolutely loading this bike down. I might have some hard enduro stuff coming later this year. I've been the only owner of this bike. It's been incredible. Like, it's a do-everything machine, and it's at a price point that is a do-everything machine. So you're getting the best of the best whenever you buy KTM. You're getting like the stainless steel brake lines, for example, Brembo brakes, hydraulic clutch, which is becoming standard on more Japanese bikes now. And with a bike as powerful as this, you do need some Brembo brakes. That's one thing that I do love about this bike. It's already got the best of the best. Sure, there's some upgrades you could do to it. First things first, I want to say, these aren't in any specific order, but there is one thing that I want to say first. And the first of our top 5 is going to be the dash. I absolutely hate the dash. I do not like the dash at all. And let me tell you why. I'm going to include a couple different things on this. I wish there was some kind of diagnostics on it. I wish it told you a little bit more information. It'd be really cool to see something like your engine temperature, actual fuel gauge to tell you how much your fuel level is at. That would be really nice. I personally have never seen the fuel light actually on until it's like a you're screwed light. That's once it's really low. As well as that, the speedometer cable is completely junk. I wish they could figure out some better system for this. I've went through 3 of these speedometer cables now. I think this is my 4th. And these are like 75 bucks a pop. And the same thing happens to them. I got it tucked behind my fork so it's a little more protected. Once you catch the speedometer cable just right in the trails, it rips the prongs right out of that connector, and then the connector goes flying. And I've looked and looked to try to find just that connector, and I haven't been able to find that. If I've been spending 75 bucks all this time for no reason whenever I could just buy that connector, then it feels bad, man. Yeah, as far as my experience, I have not been able to find those, and those are easily ripped out. I feel like KTM partnering with Trail Tech could be the perfect answer for this. Trail Tech kind of has the perfect little device that the Trail Techs give you all kinds of information. You could kind of record like your trips and stuff on here. That'd be kind of nice to see. Not only that, but it'd be nice to have some kind of color to it. I mean, maybe that's just a preference for me, but you look at something like the T7s that just recently got a color upgrade to their dash, and it brought so much more life to the bike. And I think I get why KTM charges so much for these bikes. There are some things that they cut corners on, and I feel like the dash is something that they didn't really need to cut corners on. Partnering with Trail Tech would be perfect, specific to like the EXC-F models. Something like the XCW where it's more of just a race bike, I could see why you get this simple dash. I don't know why we don't have a little bit better of a dash on these models specifically. And that's something that I'd really like to see in the future. Number 2, this one has been talked about in other videos before, but I'm going to mention it here because it is kind of a big deal. I understand this is a race bike with a plate. That was funny. Number 2 is going to be vibration. I do not like the vibration on this at all. Some long distance rides, no matter how much weight you put on it, whatever, this thing will put you to sleep, and not in a good way. Like right now, we've been riding for like a couple hours probably, and my feet are already like, I don't know if you can see it on the video, but my feet kind of have a little bit of a bounce to them constantly. That's because there's so much vibration going to the foot pegs of this thing, as well as to the handlebars. There's a lot of vibration, Handlebars, you could kind of get some, you know, like fast flex bars, reduce the vibration that way. Foot pegs, I imagine you could put some like rubber washers in there. But if we can do simple fixes like that, why can't KTM, man? It's something I would like to see in the future. I've rode like a Husky 501. It's the same way, so it's not just KTM. I imagine the gas is the same way. And with the money of those three and the R&D that goes into all three brands of those bikes, and then for all it to be on KTM, I would really like to see that in the future. Not only that, but the seat has quite a bit of vibration too. Now I got an aftermarket seat. This is the Seat Concepts. Go ahead and click on my video if you want to check out my review on it. I've used it for quite a while now, but it is not like a vibration reducer, anything like that, but still gets a lot of vibration from this thing. This bike is just a buzzy bike. But as far as like any bolts working themselves loose from all the vibration, I don't really have that problem. I mean, just like anything, you can Loctite it. Number 3, I'm going to be talking about the gearing. I can't say I hate the gearing, but I hate the gearing. Does that make sense? We got a biker gang with us now, boys. Now, if I could lay my gearing out on a chart, this would be it. I have no personal experience on the newer KTMs to be able to tell you if this has changed, but I really don't care for 4th gear in particular. First gear is perfect, 2nd gear feels kind of short, 3rd gear still feels kind of short, but it's a little bit longer, and I'm talking actual ratios, not as far as like the sprocket or anything. I'm talking the transmission side of the bike. 1st to 3rd, I'm not too crazy about. A lot of times I'm in 2nd doing some technical stuff, and I am on factory sprockets. As far as like 4th to 6th, 4th is terrible. 4th is such a useless gear, to be honest. That's such a weird thing to say. 4th is one that you just click through really quick just to get out of it. 5th is starting to get a little bit longer, and 6th gear is like perfect. But I feel like right there in the middle of the gears, between 3rd and 4th, I feel like you're just clicking through them because you're either in 1st or 2nd, or you're in 5th or 6th. And a lot of the speed limits when you're cruising like 40 miles an hour, you're still more likely just going to go ahead and click to 5th and cruise at 5th. Like right now, I'm in 5th, 40 miles an hour. I could click down to 4th, sure. I would like to see them spread out a little more and get a little bit more cruisability out of this bike. And I know it's a woods bike. I know it's a race bike. I feel like that could be something that really separates the EXC platform from the XCW or EXC-F, whatever it is on the 500. Even like that, whenever I'm about to come to a stop and then I want to click it back into a gear that I need it in, I was downshifting to 1st and then I clicked it back up to 3rd, and even then slipper part of the clutch started to engage and the tire started to spin a little bit because that just didn't feel like the right gear to the bike, but that's the right gear that I should have been in. So here's me taking off, and I'll narrate whenever I click through the gears. So I am in 1st right now. I'm going to take off pretty casual. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and this is a cruising gear, but I mean 5th, there ain't much of a difference. And 6th, she starts to bog a little bit, but it still has power. 6th gear of 40 miles an hour, and I mean 6th is the highway gear. I feel like it should be a little more of a highway gear, and one way to achieve that is just to kind of space out 3rd and 4th a little bit more, and maybe even 2nd and 4th they could do something there. That'd be something really cool to see in the future. But as far as like the newer KTM, I haven't rode one personally, so I can't say if that's been an improvement, but I have not seen anything about that, so I really don't think so. I think it's still running on the same transmission, maybe just some minor changes. But you look at the bike like the 300L, which is still a do everything bike. It can do a lot of what this bike can do, but at half the price. And I feel like, really not talking about price point, but with price considered, a little more R&D could go into the transmission to make this more of a cruisable dual sport on long adventure rides. Don't get me wrong, I can still cruise this bike at 80 miles an hour, 6th gear all day long. It's still pretty low RPM. But like my other complaint, even whenever you're cruising at those speeds, you're still catching a lot of vibration, and after a few hours that really takes a toll on your body. So that's something I would like to see change in the future, the gearing. Sorry, I went and got pictures of my bike in between talking about that.
Alright, and for number 4, we're actually going to be talking about maintenance intervals. And I forgot to plug my microphone back in for this one, so that'll be fixed in the next few clips. Let me start out by telling you why I hate the maintenance intervals on my KTM 500. As I stated before, this bike is a race bike at its core, and with that, you've got to change the oil often. And KTM calls for 10 hours, and that would be every other weekend at the rate that I ride, if not in the same weekend. Luckily, that's not very strict. At about 40 hours on an oil change, you will start to notice a little bit of clutch slippage and the bike wanting to slip out of gear. I've went several different times on 40 hours on an oil change, and though it's not the best thing for the bike, it is doable. That 10-hour rule that KTM applies is in a race scenario, and most of us just cruising the streets aren't doing that. I do always run the Motor X that KTM recommends. I feel like if you're wanting to go longer on the oil changes and stretch them out a little bit, it is a good idea to go ahead and run the oil that KTM actually tests their motors on. There are 3 oil drain plugs. Aside from oil, valve checks, super easy on this bike. Shimming the valves isn't too difficult either. So what is the thing I hate about the maintenance intervals on my KTM? I just hate how often KTM calls for these intervals. Again, whenever you look at a bike like the WR250R, 250X, 250L, 300L, even the DRZ. These bikes go thousands of miles on an oil change, whereas that 10-hour equivalent that KTM calls for is maybe 300 miles. Imagine the EXC platform with the 690 maintenance intervals. How awesome would that be? And I don't think it's totally impossible.
Alright, for the last one, I'm not going to get too particular about things like KTM does the orange frame every last year before they go to a new body style change. I don't really care about that. It is what it is. I don't like it. I've kind of done all that I can with the orange frame. It is what it is. The emissions is what it is. For this bike to be 50 state legal, it has to have emissions. Not only 50 state legal, worldwide legal. So I understand the emissions. I hate them, but I'm not going to include that as my number 5. My number 5 is actually going to be towards the subframe of this bike. I feel like it's such a missed opportunity between the EXC-F and the XCF. They can really separate these platforms with just the subframe of the bike. Now recently, the 2024 KTMs, I'm directing this at you because the 24s recently got the 3-piece subframe similar to the Husqvarnas. I'm alright with that. I don't care for the 3-piece subframes, but I do think they have their purpose, and I really don't think their purpose is for this platform of a bike. This bike, people use it for all sorts of things. It's such a multi-purpose bike. But having a bracket to the end of the fender, some kind of subframe that loops all the way back there, similar to the DRZ, the WR, the CRF, kind of subframe that loops all the way back there, so you can use it as an adventure rack. You can use it for a stunt bar. I personally know a guy who makes 12 bars for these bikes, or he used to anyway. I don't know if he still does. He seems to have the best subframe for this bike, like as far as over the plastics, and even that. It's really hard to remember the subframe is only so big on this thing. I know it's supposed to be the lightweight dual sport. It's a race bike with a plate. Simple subframe design. It could make a world of difference with this bike for the multi-purpose that people are buying these bikes for. And I feel like that's a swing and a miss. Something that could be separate from the XCF to the EXCF. And that would really put this bike to the top of the market. And it'd be so cool to have a couple little mounting areas to be able to work with using this bike, whether it's for a 12 bar or whether it's for an adventure rack. Something to be able to mount some saddlebags. That would be awesome. I got the saddlebags that just mount to the plastics and you kind of tie them down, tie them together. But even those, whenever you get into real technical sections, are flopping around quite a bit. It'd be awesome to see something mounted off the subframe. With these simple 5 changes, I think the EXCF could be the top of the market bike even more than it already is. The price point I think some of these other bikes that are half the price are doing some of these things a little bit better, but this is ultimately the best dual sport bike that you can buy, and I love that about this thing. Not too much that I can say bad about this bike, and a lot of the protection parts are such a big variety of parts that you can buy to protect this bike out there. Would like to see a little bit more as a bonus. Here's a bonus for you. I'd like to see some more protection parts from the factory on this bike, like some full bend metal hand guards, some fast flex bars to reduce the vibration, something that we kind of tied into earlier. If y'all got a dual sport, let me know down in the comments what you ride, and if there's any kind of improvements you think about your bike, let me know. I'm interested to know. Tell me how you feel about the things that I said in this video, and what are you doing, buddy? Anyway, that's gonna wrap it up for this video, and you should be seeing a video on screen right about now. I bet you it's a banger too, so you might want to click on it. Thank you for watching this video. Until I catch y'all next time, we out of here. Talking the maintenance intervals. Well, there just went my 360.